Thank you, Patricia. Our next speaker is from an Israeli startup, Scanovate, that received a grant last year from the Innovation Authority based on our professional review of their application. Please welcome Mr. Guy Stiebel, a head of product, for his presentation on the image of identity in the mobile age.
Thank you. Howdy. As previously stated, my name is Guy. I'm the head of product and architect for Scanovate, and we are proud to be a part of the companies that were invested and helped by the Innovation Authority. And what I'm going to talk to you today is a little bit on a different perspective of identity, is more from the commercial and enterprise perspective. So a little bit about Scanovate. We've been working with bank and financial institutions for the past 5 years, providing them with solutions starting from image processing and ranging into identity management. And when we walked into that area, we walked as an integrated solution. We're not a standalone identity provider. We work within the ecosystem of a bank or a financial institution and help them interact with users. So most of the Israeli guys here will know the check deposit tools that you have with banks. So 85% of them are using our tech. Solutions like Pepper Bank, solutions like bill payment online are using our image processing technology to enable easier interaction. Now, through time, we identified that there is one weird, let's say, underlying problem when it comes to interaction between an enterprise and an individual, and it's the part of identification and authentication, or the way we like to describe it is who you are, really, now prove that you are who you say you are, which is usually a bottleneck that breaks the interaction side on the part of the organization on one end, because to be completely honest, the bank doesn't really care. The bank has to know who you are in order to maintain the liability side of the business. But as far as business is concerned, it's a risk. They don't really, doesn't matter that much to them, but they have to prove who you are. As far as the client is concerned, it's a hassle. And the problem we encountered is that although the requirement of identity in a mobile environment improved and you need more, let's say, fluid and smooth methods of interaction, the mechanism of identity didn't. So you still have to prove and reassert a lot of layers of data that exist physically in your ID, in paperwork, in a lot of forms, but they don't function within your phone. And true, when identity schemes and identity providers like the guys here exist widely, then you can transfer that. But we're still dealing with the uninitiated. What happens when you don't have a digital identity token? How do you move forward? How do you interact? And how do you identify yourself? Which led to the need for establishing trust within the identification scheme. How do I know that you are who you say you are when I don't see you? That's the basic problem. When you walk into a digital environment and you provide all the certificates in the world, how can I establish that trust between the person, the technology, and the service provider in the end? And the way we figured out is that in order to do so, we need an identification token. And it needs to be effective, and it has 3 golden rules. It needs to be non-revocable. I cannot take it away from you. I cannot change it. It needs to be something strong enough. It can be non-transferable. I cannot give to you my identity to use otherwise, and it has to be unique. And there is a method of doing that. And the method of doing it is, as you probably assume is the theme of the evening and theme of the day, is biometrics. It's something you have. It's non-revocable, non-transferable, and unique. It's something you own. Something you carry with you. Unlike OTP or any other solution, if I steal your phone, I cannot steal your face. If I assert enough levels of liveness, facial biometrics, and detection, those are non-removable, especially facial biometrics, more than fingerprints, more than iris, because facial biometrics does not require hardware. It's not linked to a scanner. It's not linked to a specific device. It's any camera enables facial biometrics, which means that every camera phone is a biometric device. Now, if you link those together and you look at them as a scheme, you understand that the facial biometrics, one back, not done yet. So the facial biometric scheme actually allows you to interact smoothly between the service provider and the user. Now, the problem was, how do you deal with those unknowns? And that way we solved it. We took something that's relatively old school, which is OCR. And we dealt with connecting the document to the person, to the data. So that's the trinity within the enterprise environment, building trust within the identification cycle. When you come to open a bank account, when you come to buy something, we need a self-service cycle of trust, which is collecting the data, asserting the provenance. That data is connected to a person and it's proper, and then linking that to the individual and building that identification token. And through those things, we succeeded in deploying solutions today that are being used by banks in Europe, banks in Israel, and allowing them to enable service. And when we talked about the importance of what we do in a global scale, and also when we talk to the Innovation Authority, is we believe that proper use of biometrics as a form of identification is a form of financial inclusion. It's a form of scaling up services. Because as long as you have to physically go somewhere, you are limited to the range of your car. How far can you get in order to get a service? Wherein all you need, if you have an effective method, is an internet connection and a camera. And you can access services. And access of service is an equalizer. It means that people can get the same treatment, either education, loans, financial service in the space that we work with, but it's also governmental service. We are, for example, working right now, and there's two nice ladies at the back that we work with here, we're working on how to help facilitate better service in healthcare. How can you use soft background, easy biometrics to identify people in treatment to limit mistakes? And that's what we do. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. I don't do a demo because there's a big camera pointed at me, and that will mean that my ID will be presented on the screen. As someone who deals with biometrics, I'm kind of fearful for my personal data. So go ahead. Thank you. Come on, next. Thank you. Thank you. It's not very listening to me.
Please provide an example of what you mean by a collection of identities.
In what section?
Can you give us an example of your system, how it works? Or?
Yeah, sure. So when you want to open a bank account, for example, I'll give you, we have a client in France. When you want to open a bank account, you have to establish a certain chain of documents in order to open a bank account. One of them is who you are, which is proof of identity. Then you have to prove that you're a resident. Then you have to prove that you live in a specific area. No, we're talking about a digital bank and an application. So the idea of what we do, so I'll make that clear. So let's say that you have a banking app for a non-initiated. You don't have a digital identity before. You just open an app, and you want to open a bank account from that app. We provide the tools within that app that will collect the data from the document, provide facial biometrics, provide the linkage, actually do some of the AML PAP sanctions, and will package the data internally within the organization itself. So if you have an app on your phone and you want to open a bank account from that app, we will provide the tools internally to scan the ID, match the face, and provide the entire token.
How do you know that I'm not pretending to be somebody else?
Depending on the type of data in the country. So every country has different schemes that allows us. So for example, in Slovakia, I can actually connect directly to the internal ministry and check that the ID is real. In other countries, you can use the chip. Some countries use secondary data points, etc. So it moves on. It will never be as safe as going physically to show. The problem is that a good forgery will fool a teller the same way it will fool a machine. There's nothing, it's actually easier to fool a teller than to fool a machine. Any other questions? Yeah, sure.
Just if you could mention what you're showing downstairs.
Sure. So downstairs, there's a team of our people showing our KYC solutions and our identification solutions. So we have our identity solutions linked into our KYC environment. There's a demo, and there's the rest of the team. And they're actually, we'll be more than happy to show you a lot of demos and how it works, and some of the deployment methods that we did before with the system. All right.
So one of the keys of the old application system is that the identity card that you compare the face to the picture on. So do you take liability of making sure that the card itself is authentic and not?
I will quote some government officials I've met before. Nobody but the government can authorize that a document is real.
Do you check the authenticity?
To the limit of what a phone camera can do. So without UV, without chips, without microprinting, without a lot of the features that are built for border control, and even the companies that make the scanners for border control will tell you without linkage to the government, I have no way of telling you if it's real or not. In Israel, it's even trickier because our old IDs are a piece of paper and lamination. There's not even a lot of security features in those. We're fixing it, but the old ones are, yes, wherever we can. The way we deal with it is by doing more data-driven. So instead of counting only on the ID, taking multiple data points like historical data from telco operators to see if the address matches over time, looking at behavioral data, and then building a stronger case for the information and not depending on a piece of paper that's more easily forged. Anything else? No? Thank you.